I have a hypnosis audio website with an influencer on YouTube. I also have a couple online learning platforms. I've recently become an astrologer. There's another business called Ashenyola Music Publishing. It is restorative justice curriculum that
Oh,
is taught to nonprofit organizations. We also do music licensing.
in this episode of Marketers Take Wing, I have the pleasure of interviewing Geraldine Juventa. She's best known as the entrepreneur guide, web, and SEO expert. One of the most fascinating things about Geraldine is that she's founded and running 6 businesses. How did she do that? How did she get started? Listen in to find out more. Welcome, Geraldine. I'm so excited to have you as a guest on my new podcast. How are
Thank
you
you. Thanks for
doing?
inviting me.
Yeah,
I'm
my
doing awesome.
pleasure. Yeah, we've known each other for, I guess, over a decade through networking. And for a brief time, we were members of the same social club. I know we know a lot of people in common. Maybe we even had clients in the past in common. I'm really excited to interview you because you have so much going on and highlight how people can do what you're doing too, if that's what they choose to. But tell me first, how did you get started in having your own business, your first business? Anyway.
I started by accident. I knew since I was a kid that I wanted to start a business because all my family worked for other people and they're busy all the time.
Mhm.
So, lightweight, I was jealous. And I said to myself as a kid, if I own a business, then I could probably create my own time, which, as you and I know, is sometimes true and sometimes not. But I ended up going into the workforce, working for different corporations and seeing how things were structured and seeing where they can be improved. And eventually I came to a place where I left my job at an advertising agency and took a break for a while and was really getting into my hobby of collecting records, vinyl records. And I had so much that I said to myself, well, I should probably offload some of this collection so I can buy more. And I ended up selling my records on Craigslist. And then people said, hey, do you have more records? And I said, yeah, I put up a little website, built it with HTML. I knew how to do that. And my first client was from Finland. And they said they found me on Google.
Oh, wow.
So from there, the rest is pretty much history. I mean, I started an online vinyl record business. I learned how to run that and market it. And then from there, started other businesses.
So you had your first business selling vinyl records, which I didn't know. I know you're a big musician, and I would just assume that you collect music as well. So you started that's your first business, and then what was the next one? So for the listeners or the watchers, you're gonna follow along on this journey because Geraldine owns several businesses. I actually don't know the number right now. So what was the next business after that?
The next business after that was I started to become a salesperson for my friend's graphic design company.
Hmm.
So it wasn't anything formal. I mean, they were freelancers and I would just refer them business and I would get a commission. But
Mhm.
what I quickly discovered was that it wasn't enough money. The commissions were pretty small and I wasn't really trying to just market to a whole bunch of people for something that's on my own service.
Right.
So I ended up building websites. So it was for the company Meet Geraldine, which is the one that you and I met through. And I started going door to door in downtown Oakland, selling my services as a marketer and a web developer. And I got a few clients that way.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something that I think people are scared to do is to just introduce themselves to their neighbors and say, "Here's what I
Yeah.
got."
And it's interesting that I even did it because it wasn't really in my nature to just do that. But at the time, I had just sold my car and I was on public transportation a lot. So I would go to downtown Oakland just to hang out. And eventually I would just observe these businesses and think to myself, well, they could do better, whether it was the way that they promote themselves, which usually wasn't at all.
Right.
Or they, like, this would be a really great event space, but they don't do events, that type of
Mhm.
thing. So I would just offer suggestions and eventually build trust and sell services.
Mhm. And even that business has evolved with time. How you started making websites, you started offering marketing, and how did that expand further from there, or is that about when I first met you?
Yeah, when we first met, we were offering everything and networking like crazy, which is why we ended up meeting and having a lot of building
Mhm.
a community of mutual friends. But it was interesting because we really built a name for ourselves in everything we did in marketing and web development. And before the pandemic, I realized something was that, the more that you tell people that you do, although they kind of have an idea, the more confused they are. So what I ended up doing before the pandemic is splitting Meet Geraldine's offerings into two different companies. So today, Meet Geraldine is specifically WordPress web maintenance because we've always had a web maintenance team. And then we have another company called Reverence, which is all the marketing and online presence services.
Mhm. Okay. And do you still have the same type of clientele with both companies? With, like,
Yeah.
local businesses?
We actually ended up building three different audiences. So we work with solopreneurs, small business teams that might have a handle on their marketing, but just don't have capacity.
Mhm.
And also mission-driven companies and nonprofits who definitely have all the infrastructure and support, but they don't have the guidance to create the strategy or
Right.
to have be that eagle eye to be able to say, you've tried all these things, but how about if you implement this or
Mhm.
this particular team do that, kind of directing them so they could do it internally.
Yeah. I wanna go back to reverence, but first, I just wanna see, are there any other businesses that you currently have or explored?
Yeah, there are a
Okay.
lot actually. So the different spaces that I have since worked in ever since I guess I got a handle on the marketing and web space
Mhm.
is in the areas of personal empowerment. So I have a hypnosis audio website with an influencer on YouTube named Robert Zink. And on that one, it's a subscription based hypnosis audio site where people can listen to empowering messages to rewrite their limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
And then I also have a couple online learning platforms, one of which is called Listen and Launch. I do that with Giselle Martin, and it's us sharing our journey as entrepreneurs and discussing all the different skills and mindsets that you need to have as entrepreneurs.
And that I have to just add in here, that is absolutely excellent. It was just Geraldine had reached out when they launch or about to launch. I'm like, "Well, I've gotta listen to it first, just, make sure that I could promote it with confidence." And, oh my gosh, it is so good.
Thank you.
Especially, I think, just personal opinion here, especially I think for people who may be a little bit more introspective or not necessarily introverted, but more introspective and wants a holistic viewpoint when it comes to starting your own business. So I would definitely I'll put all of Geraldine's links in the description, but that's one of my favorites. The course for people who are starting a new business, the
Mhm.
hypnosis website, which is
Mhm.
subscription based, and then you were about to say
Uh,
something else.
yeah, there's few more. Um, I've recently, in the past year, become an astrologer.
I didn't know that. Oh, that's so moving.
Yeah, I've always had a love for astrology, especially Eastern astrology, or
Me too.
particularly Vedic astrology and
Oh.
also locational astrology. Because you and I spoke a long time ago that I ended up moving to Denver,
Mhm.
so because it was the best place for me based on my astrology.
Know that.
In this whole exploration of astrology, what I realized is that if you combine a number of different astrological ways of thought, then it creates a really accurate picture and just very valid guidance for anyone looking to accomplish something.
Mhm.
So the way that I've developed my astrology coaching is that if there's someone who's really committed to empower key areas of their life, then they should reach out to me, get a whole reading, and over time they would like, but it's based on what they're looking to achieve.
Oh, that's amazing. What other businesses do now I have one questions.
So there's another business called Asinyola Music Publishing, and one of my friend and I in the Bay Area started that It is restorative justice curriculum that
Oh,
is taught to nonprofit organizations so they can teach their target audiences, whether it's at-risk youth or we have clients that do EMT services. It gives them the opportunity to really get to know mediation processes, their own familial traumas and deal with those, and also learn a lot about communication and self-expression. So we offer those training programs, but on the side, since we do music, we
hmm
also do we also do music licensing. So we create our own music that's licensed for film and television, and it's the other leg of self-expression because a piece of it is that some of the music that's included in our restorative justice curriculum is original music with spoken word and rap integrated, so that way it's a lot more accessible for the audiences that are learning.
hmm yeah. Okay, that's amazing. When I'm looking overall at the business, how do you manage not only the different roles that you with the multiple businesses and probably multiple roles you have as well? How do you manage? How do you split your time and your attention towards the different businesses?
I feel very grateful about how much time I actually have in my day now.
Mhm.
It wasn't always like this, but what I will advise is that knowing how to create systems and processes that can translate and be easily understood to a team, and having a solid team, and also knowing how to collaborate with business partners. Those were the top 3 things that really have allowed me to take on more businesses and also feel comfortable setting my time more freely.
Mhm.
Because after creating systems and processes, which is a really hard thing to do and really sucks, it's tedious, to be honest. Um, After I was able to work with the team to do that and learn like, okay, this is how everything should operate and have one solid team because for the web maintenance and the marketing company, we have one team, even though the two
Okay.
businesses. I was like, okay, we could duplicate the same exact concept, but in different ways. So the value I ended up bringing with my other business partners in these other areas that aren't marketing and web is that I was able to bring process and infrastructure to the businesses that we would create together, where they would provide their own expertise as well
Mhm.
as their influence. So, in that way, we're able to create more businesses that are sustainable and not have to do all the work individually.
Right, right. And I'm assuming that if you have the multiple businesses and with systems, that you have systems in place to get clients as well. Because I think
Yeah.
that can be a time-consuming factor as well, is this constant direct sales or marketing for your businesses. Are most of your businesses inbound marketing? Inbound and, referral-based marketing?
Yes, absolutely. The only one that are outbound, well, the only one that's outbound is the hypnosis, right? But
Oh,
what's advantageous with that is since my business partner is a YouTube influencer and has over 1 million subscribers, his reach is so much further than I could do on my own.
mhm.
So we haven't really done very much ads. So we've been really lucky to be able to just do it based off of our own personal networks and brands.
Oh, that's great. 'Cause I think that would appeal to a lot of people who are multi-passionate, they have a lot of interests, and I know I have a lot of interests, but I don't necessarily have the greatest follow-through. A couple years ago, my word of the year was completion, so that I could complete one project and create that system for gaining clients through that project. But it sounds like this is something it's more natural for you to when creating something is create the systems around it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that also helps with the long-term ability to sell or have word of mouth referrals is
Mhm,
networking, which I think you and I have both have done a really great job of over the past over 15 years in the circles
mhm,
that we were trained by, and also the circles of influence that we've been involved in.
mhm.
So definitely building that network early on because I think that's what's paid the most over time for me and my businesses. and also having passion. And I think that you do a great job at this too in creating content because a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners are scared to express their voice publicly. And I think that it's a really critical part of being able to carry your brand through over time and no matter what industry you're involved in. So
Mhm.
now I'm primarily in the web, business, and marketing space, but I've been able to expand into other industries because people trust and they've gotten to know me over the years through video and audio.
Yeah, you do a great job of continuing to put out videos, to put out audio, follow you on your Instagram accounts as well as on YouTube, and I think on TikTok too. So you do a great job of using your voice and doing that. And I noticed that the topics will fluctuate depending on well, I don't know what they're depending on. What influences you in terms of your content and what you're putting out?
What's I have this belief that, some people say, "Oh, and you have to post 3 times a week, 5 times a week," or whatever it is, right? Sorry, I can't do that. Unless I completely delegate that to someone else, but even still, it would take time for me to do content validation.
Hmm.
So, for some reason, I just go with whatever's inspiring me at the time. So, what tends to happen is once or twice a month, I'll all of a sudden have all these ideas or look through my old content and say, "Okay, I'm gonna schedule content for 2 weeks." And so 2 weeks, I'm going really hard with content, and then I will ghost for 2 to 4 weeks because I just wait for the inspiration to hit, right?
Yes,
Well,
there.
yeah, people think, like, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't leave my audience behind because they're not waiting for you to post." I'm sorry. You're showing up in their feed as a reminder of who you are and what value you have to offer. So, for me, I like quality versus quantity,
Right.
and that's how I like to express myself and do social media, and sometimes it's very seldom.
Yeah. And what's great about systems such as search engine optimization and platforms like YouTube, it can be focused more on evergreen and long-term marketing. So it doesn't matter if you didn't post yesterday. I was just watching somebody's video, some influencer on YouTube and Instagram who I can't think of the name right now, and she showed a study that content on TikTok lasts like 0 seconds. Viral. And on YouTube, it was like 6 days. And that's just in terms of it showing up in the feed, but people are searching for it. It can show up using the right SEO tactic.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say too, I know people really get hard on themselves about social media and they get discouraged because there's not that much engagement or likes or they don't have that many followers. But just because you have a viral video doesn't mean you're gonna get a whole bunch of business. I
Right.
think what's more valuable is generating a conversation over a longer span of time so people can get to know you. You mentioned that you wanted to know how I create my content, and I do it based on my knowledge I think is valuable for others and what I feel at the time. And it's not always only about, building a business or only about something else. And oftentimes, yeah, even though I'm a marketing expert, I don't really talk about marketing that much. It's like I'd rather have people get to know me.
Mhm.
And, if they're curious about all those other stuff, let's have a consultation or one or another conversation to talk about their needs or their what they would like to be guided on. I think that's really more of my vibe, that one-on-one, a small group conversation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, not like not a formula.
Yeah, and that's something that AI can never replace. Yeah, it can produce all of the written content and maybe even can fake a video. Maybe by the time it's
Yeah.
published, might be some insane breakthrough, but I it could never replace the person or the human connection. So,
That's true.
yeah, yeah. So, what's next? What's your day-to-day like when
My
you're
day to
managing
day.
multiple businesses? Mhm.
Yeah, well, my teammates pretty much are self-guided at this point because everyone just knows what they need to do and they're assigned to different things. So I have a lot of free times between meetings or between tasks. That's really important for my thought process. So I'll pretty much start work like 10 or 11. meditate, make my breakfast, do whatever I need to do in the morning, and then have a few meetings throughout the day. I usually have a very specific to-do list that usually is created a couple days in advance. I try not to pack too much into my day. I have periodic check-ins with certain teammates that are leaders in my organization. Usually I check in with them anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half every single week. But for the most part, I'm pretty self-led and I don't really manage all that much. And outside of that, maybe I'll have a 2-hour strategy meeting with my business partners every now and then. So it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, that's great. If you were to look back through this journey when you were first starting out, maybe with a web design business, what kind of advice would you and I hope this stitches together. So, looking back to when you first started your web design business, would there be any advice you would have given to yourself when you first started?
That's a good question. I wonder if I did give this advice to myself, how differently it would have turned. But I ran my web business pretty much working day and night. All the time that I had, I would spend building websites and coding because at the time I didn't have other people doing the work. Really overworking myself for real. But at that time, I did not even think that I would have a team or that I would expand my business because I fell into it by accident. It was just my passion. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, this is so great. I'm getting paid to do web design. Yeah, which is awesome. I didn't really realize the impact that would have on my stress levels and my lack of time or or ability to be social over time. But I guess I would have said to myself that one day you might be so busy that you'll need other people to help you. So at this time, think about what parts of your process or what you're doing you could explain to other people. And if other people were doing it, how would you want it to be done? And I didn't really learn that skill until way later. But I think early on from the beginning, if I had thought about that, maybe I could have accelerated the growth of my business because once I start adding on people, that's when I start to see, oh, we can actually increase our revenues and we can start to reinvest in our business or invest in tools and training and resources that can make our skills better or make our offering a lot stronger.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Who was your first hire? Well, who was your first hire, and who do you think was the best early hire? Sometimes our first hire may not have been the right choice.
Yeah, a graphic designer for me, for sure,
Oh.
because I've always had a sense or an eye for design, and I knew how to compile designs and code, but I could never create from scratch.
Mm.
So it was a lot easier for me to understand the functionality, to understand how to create a structure for something. But in terms of being able to connect with visual with a brand and express that through a brand look and feel, I couldn't really do that. So my first hire was graphic designer, and to be honest, she worked with me for over, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, and then one day she quit because she got a full-time job, and
Wow.
I was so hurt.
Oh, so
I thought it was the end of the world, and I was so sad, and from there, once people started coming and going from my business, I started to realize, like, although this does happen, like, it's okay, now you know what quality work is and how to identify it. And what was interesting about these people who have come and go, a lot of them have actually come back. So it ended up working out, but the first couple of people that ended up quitting, I was just so sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember feeling that way about someone who worked with me who I wanted to bring on as a partner, but that was not
Mhm.
their goal, and my mistake was not even asking. I just made an assumption, and I didn't even ask what did they want. I remember hearing from a business consultant saying, like, the good ones will go eventually.
Oh, no.
I'm sure it depends on what their goals are and everything, but I think he was advising his client to set up this expectation of letting go of expectations, really. Yeah, realizing that when they're really good, they may move on to something, that fits their goals and their visions more when it's more in alignment for them. But I think it was more about letting go of holding on.
Yeah, that makes sense. But one thing I will
Yeah.
say for anyone out there who has really great teammates, to make sure that collectively you document process and thought process specifically. Like, how do you make like the decision making processes around creatives or around um, generating things for clients or all of those things are really important. And if you have those documented, when people leave or you even split their position into two people's position, then it's a lot easier for onboarding.
That makes a lot of sense because it's not just about documenting processes, but like you mentioned, documenting the thought process or decision making process. And then that way you don't have to be the one to always make the decisions and always be that bottleneck. And I could
Yeah.
see that's how you're empowering your team as well. And it frees up your time.
Yeah. And that's one of the key things that I learned about leadership and from, because you might be familiar, but Leland Thompson Consulting, he was my coach for many years. And that's one of the things he would always tell me. He would say, Geraldine, when you're with your team, you need to think out loud because you need to make sure that your team observes your decision making process. So if for whatever reason you're not around to make those decisions, they're not scared to move forward without you. Because at the end of your day as a leader, you don't want a whole team of people that are always waiting for you to tell them what to do. You want to have them feel empowered in their own decision making abilities.
Oh, that's really great. What do you see for yourself in the horizon?
What's next is I'm kind of in this, I feel like all businesses expand and they contract.
Hmm.
You know, you might have rapid growth for a while, then you get overwhelmed, and then you kind of contract and figure out, okay, how can I go lean? How can I do things better? Do I need all the teammates that I have? Are we doing things efficiently? So last year, I was kind of in that place where I wanted to pivot just a little bit and assess what we were doing. And I'm in a place now where I really like my schedule and I still wanna make more money too. So it's like, okay, like, how do I build this formula? You know, or like, how do I make this work in the long run? So I'm focusing on creating a lot of passive income structures for my companies or, yeah, just really figuring out how can we package a lot of what we've done so we can generate more passive income in the future. I also am starting to do a lot of content on YouTube and other places for that same purpose. So definitely passive income, building those revenue streams and thinking about for these companies that are working and working really well, how can we do less and make more? So one of the directions that we have been looking at for the past years for our marketing company is that our vision is to build our own brands and limit ourselves to being what's called a closed agency. So a closed agency meaning you only have specific clients and you take no more. So our
Sorry about that. You were
it's
just
okay.
about to you were just about to mention the talk about the closed agency. What is a closed
Yeah.
agency?
So a closed agency is something I learned from someone else who has a closed agency. I was like, what is that? And so long story short, they have a specific amount of clients. I forget what it is. It might be two or five. I don't remember. Something really small,
Huh?
but that's it. They
Yeah.
focus on working with those clients and helping them build their revenue. They do everything they can for those particular
Mhm.
clients. So for us internally, there's certain people on the team who want to build themselves up as thought leaders. So myself and a few other people were to focus on our own. We're basically in a market for us. And then in terms of clientele, our plan is to only have 5 or 6 clients that we work with, and that's it. And we only focus on building their brand, expanding their offerings, and, that's it.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, I have heard of closed agencies. I just didn't realize that was the name for it. But it makes a lot of sense because I think we're coming out closed agency.
You said
Uh,
you knew of that, but you didn't know that's what it was called.
yeah, I didn't know that was the name for it, but it makes sense. I think we're coming out of this paradigm where you're supposed to just grow for growth's sake. I know that I've hit that mistake several times. I'm a little stubborn. I need to make the same mistake a few times in different businesses before I really get it. But realized, oh, it was the book. It's called Company One. That was an eye opener for me of that you don't have to grow a business to scale, that it could just be you or a small team and
Yeah.
be able to increase your revenue. That's also doesn't have to be a thing where you're increasing income to just increase income. You can increase income because of inflation, family members to support, because I want to
Yeah.
give back more to the world. So I think that's also a thing is that we don't have to go through a hustle path to make more money, but more of generating more abundance for ourselves and for our communities.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just through growing or creating a big business.
I really like how you said that because I think it's important to be really intentional. Know your personal values, understand the values of the company and how that aligns in terms of your money strategies. And always knowing that, I mean, people might disagree with this, but cash is king. Yeah, especially running a business, cash flow is so important. The larger businesses and the corporations and startups, their main advantage is that they're backed by funding. And funding will get you the best advice. It'll also allow you the opportunity to run your business without the stress of wondering when the cash is going to come through. Because, I mean, you and I, after years of doing business, know that sometimes payments come late or
Mhm.
someone cancels their contract. And at those times, you have to be very creative and actually have the fight or flight response around like, oh gosh, where am I going to get the money to cover these expenses? Because that next check isn't coming till next week.
Mhm. Definitely have been there. It is nice to have more of a cushion around life, around our schedules, around life, around finances. And that can take time to build, but also making the right decisions.
Yeah. So that's the other thing I'd say I would have said to myself a long time ago as that web developer coding day and night, or anyone who runs a business right now is price overpriced, like price to scale because there's so many uncertainties that will happen in the span of your entrepreneurial career that really need that funding. You want to invest in those opportunities when you need to and skill building. You want to be able to pay for your bills when something unexpected happens or hire that person all of a sudden when you get that one new contract that's not going to pay you your first paycheck for 2 months.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that happened to a couple of, prospective clients for us, is they signed a $1,000,000 government contract, but their their, employees wanna be paid every 2 weeks, even if the
Um,
government takes 30 to 60 days to pay on an invoice. So, yeah, having that cash flow is king. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Geraldine, for being on. I love catching up with you and learning more about your business. I didn't even know. Even after knowing you for more than a decade. Anything you wanna close on or tell people more about?
let's see. The one thing I will say for anyone who is struggling in entrepreneurship or thinking about starting a business, trying is so important. Like I agree that entrepreneurship is not for everybody. You have to have a certain amount of resilience. You have to build and develop a certain mindset and you have to be around a community that's going to lift you up. And some people just don't have the patience for that. But I always say that it's worth a try because why wouldn't you try something just because someone else told you you can't or you shouldn't?
Thank you, Geraldine. And if you are interested in starting your own business or would like some advice as you start your business, check out Geraldine's course. Also, if you would like to brushing up on your SEO skills or learn search engine optimization, she has a course on that as well, and I'll put that in the description too. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Geraldine. She has also just published her first book with co-writer and a client of mine, Randy Lyman, and it's called Start with Keywords. If you'd like to learn more about Geraldine, her businesses, or how she can help you in getting clear about your relationship with money, with any limiting beliefs, I'm going to put her contact info below, as well as a link to her newest book, Start with Keywords. If you'd like to learn more about growing your business so it's aligned with your values and being able to develop your voice so you can increase your messaging, increase your impact in the world, subscribe for more. And then also check out my new Substack called Impact Messaging Lab. If you become a paid member at only $5 a month of the Impact Messaging Lab, I provide daily writing prompts, a private chat for us, as well as daily co-working hours so that we can work on your messaging, your writing, your social media, your blogs, whatever you're working on, we can work on it together so that you can align your marketing with your values, increase your impact in the world through your business. Thank you for watching or listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.